Welcome everyone to today's session. It's great to see so many people already here, and I think some more are going to be signing up. Just to, as I say, give you an idea of what we're talking about. This is really to celebrate Carers' Rights Day, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And I'm going to, the first speaker is going to be Kevin Stewart, who's the Minister for Mental Health and Social Care. Unfortunately, Kevin can't actually be here in person or on screen, but we have a recorded message. I'm going to talk a wee bit from the carer positive perspective to tell you a wee bit about Carer Positive and what we've been doing, and also just covering some of the issues around working carers. We have three Carer Positive organisations with us today, and I'm really delighted that I'll be able to welcome Ray Higgins from Police Scotland, Kevin Rooney and Tony Smith from Agenor Technology, and sorry Kevin, your name's not on that at the moment, but I'll add that in, and Peter Lawson from Natwest. And we're also going to hear from Lorraine Lee, who's in the Fair Work team in the Scottish Government, about the links to the need to support carers and how that links to the whole Fair Work agenda and aspirations around trying to promote better working practices. After the speakers, we'll have a bit of a comfort break, and then I'd like to open it out to a kind of question and answer panel session and some open discussion. And I'd really like to encourage people at that point to share their views, share their experiences, and ask questions. So without further ado, I shall come out of that. I'll stop sharing, which I did actually manage to do successfully there. And first of all, and I can see we've got 42 folk here, so I think that probably is the number about sort of stable at the moment. So as I said, the Kevin Stewart MSP, the Minister for Mental Health and Social Care, kindly recorded an opening message for us, which I'm going to now ask Christine to play for us. Thanks, Christine.
No problem at all, just that on just now.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Carer Positive workshop. I'm pleased to be invited to talk about unpaid carers in Scotland on Carers' Rights Day and highlight the extremely valuable contribution they make to our society. I'm sorry that I've not been able to join the live event this afternoon. Today is a great opportunity to raise awareness of carers and their needs. It highlights the importance of carers understanding their rights and knowing how to access the support they need at the right time, and crucially, helping carers to maintain their own health and well-being. I appreciate that many of you will have your own personal experience of caring for family or friends, or know someone who does. Prior to the pandemic, there was an estimated 700,000 to 800,000 unpaid carers who dedicate a huge amount of their time and energy caring. However, research indicates that this could have risen to as much as 1.1 million people with caring responsibilities now. This means that it has never been so important that we understand the pressures carers face so that we can support them to maintain their own health and well-being. Pressures like always being on call, not having time to enjoy a hobby or spend time with other friends and family, or juggling caring with other responsibilities like childcare and running a household. The other big responsibility to be juggled is, of course, work. There are approximately 270,000 carers in Scotland who combine employment and unpaid care. This represents around 1 in 8 of the workforce. And as we have seen during the pandemic, circumstances can change quickly. So as we move forward, we need to prepare for carer numbers growing as our population enjoys longer lives and people's care needs become more complex. We must acknowledge the reality that most people will be carers at some stage in their working lives. It's therefore increasingly important that our workplaces are inclusive environments so that carers can take up or maintain meaningful employment alongside their caring role. This has never been so vital, as we know that many carers feel lonely or socially isolated as a result of giving up work to care. Alongside the risks of social isolation from giving up work or reducing working hours, there are obvious financial challenges and uncertainty for carers and their families. In most cases, this will create an immediate strain on a family's finances, but may also have a longer-term impact on future career opportunities and earnings. As well as the impacts on individuals, we're also conscious of the huge impact that caring can have on organisations. Losing valuable employees with specific skills and experience is always a headache. Losing carers from an already shrinking workforce is a concern for the wider economy. And it's estimated that unpaid carers leaving employment cost the UK public purse £2.9 billion a year in welfare payments and lost tax revenue. In particular, we're acutely aware that caring disproportionately affects working age women in their late 40s and early 50s. In fact, over a quarter of women in this age bracket are carers. Women giving up work to care or not taking up promotion because of the pressure of caring contributes towards Scotland's gender pay gap. The most recent figures show a slight increase in Scotland's gender pay gap. The gap for all employees, including full and part-time workers, increased from 11.1% in 2020 to 11.6% in 2021. However, this is still below the gap of 14.4% that existed in 2019. So we are seeing a continuing longer-term downward trend. The downward trend is encouraging, but through our Gender Pay Gap Action Plan, we will continue to take action to maintain progress. We understand that the government has an important role in tackling these issues, and we are working hard to create the conditions for change. We believe that part of ensuring carers remain connected and have good well-being is to support them to balance work and their caring responsibilities if that is what they want and need. This will not only bring vital benefits to carers, but also employers and the economy. A range of Scottish Government policies aim to recognise and promote these benefits. Some of these are specific to carers, many are part of the wider Fair Work agenda, but will have a particular importance for carers. The Fair Work Action Plan recognises the challenges many carers face in sustaining a job. It commits to promoting awareness of carers in the workplace and flexibility for them through Carer Positive. You will shortly be hearing from Sue McLintock, who has played a fundamental part in the success of Carer Positive since its establishment in 2014. Her hard work has resulted in 216 Carer Positive employers who cover over 470,000 employees throughout Scotland. That is 470,000 people working in organisations committed to making carers feel valued and supported. You also have a number of Carer Positive employees here today, sharing the work that they are undertaking to support carers in their workforce and the benefits they are experiencing as employers. So having spoken about the value of getting the right support for carers in the workplace, it's just about time for me to hand over to Sue for her to explain Carer Positive in more detail. However, before I do, I would just like to say that I hope that we will all leave today with some new ideas about how we can effectively support carers in Scotland's workplaces. Due to the pandemic, most of you will already be supporting your employees with flexible and hybrid working. Therefore, you have already completed significant changes which would assist carers in your workplaces. So if you have not already done so, I would strongly encourage you to apply to become a Carer Positive accredited employer. We all play an important part in ensuring Scotland's diverse workforce is healthy, respected and valued. I hope that you all enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, it's odd saying thank you to somebody who isn't actually here in person, but thanks to the Minister for providing that very positive message. And we'll hear a wee bit more about some of the things that he was talking about when Lorraine Lee speaks a wee bit later as well, in relation to fair work and the gender pay gap. But I will now continue with my presentation, which will just give a bit of an overview from our perspective. And then more importantly than hearing me speak, we'll hear from some employers. So bear with me and I'll get my presentation back up on screen. And here it is. And into the slide share. Oh, same issue again. Right, here we go. Okay, so Carers' Rights Day, just to remind us, although I think we all obviously do know what it's about, but each year Carers' Rights Day basically helps us try to ensure that carers are aware of their rights, because many people aren't, especially if you become new to caring. You don't know what support is out there for you. If you're a new carer in the workplace as well, you're maybe not aware of the rights within your own organisation. So we want to...
Sorry to interrupt, I'm not sure if everyone else can see. I can only see your first slide, if you know what I mean.
Really?
Yes, I don't think we can see the when you press the sort of start slideshow kind of view.
Okay, because I've moved it on, and is that the only one you can see, the very first one?
Yes, and I can see the background to the PowerPoint app as well, or program.
Right, it's certainly in presenter view as far as I can see, but let me just come out, and if I need to, I'll just keep it on. Can everybody see this view?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I had gone into the presenter view of the slideshow, but if it's not moving on, I'll maybe just keep it in this. I had got to the slide about Carers' Rights Day. If you put in the chat if there's an issue, and if you can't see anything, please, someone will let me know. But yeah, I was saying that on Carers' Rights Day, it's important to try and ensure that carers are aware of their rights, and to let them know where to get help and support, and to raise awareness of the needs of carers. And in a workplace context, it's really helpful for employers to be able to help facilitate that, to make sure that the people who are working within their organisations are aware of their rights, and to signpost them to other sources of support, and to raise awareness within their organisation of the needs of carers. And just very briefly, I don't want to make this too sort of legislative, but it's maybe just quite useful just now to remind ourselves of what rights carers do have at work at the moment. And just very briefly, carers at the moment, like everyone else, has the right to request flexible working. Now, currently that's if they've been in employment for 26 weeks. They have the right to take time off for emergencies, to respond to situations which involve a dependent, and that is billed as reasonable time off. It might be a couple of days, and it's unpaid but can be paid obviously at the discretion of employers. Parents have the right to take up to 18 weeks unpaid leave for each child up to their 18th birthday. And they have to take that in blocks of whole weeks, and up to a maximum usually of 4 weeks in a year. But carers who maybe care for disabled children can take that more flexibly. They can take blocks of days at a time. So there's a bit more flexibility there. Additionally, there's the Equalities Act, which has actually sometimes been used successfully, which protects people against discrimination because of their caring role, you know, by association. So they might feel that in a workplace they've been discriminated against because they are caring for somebody, and they might feel they might not have received a promotion, or, you know, there might be some form of discrimination. So those are the basic statutory rights, but obviously in addition to those, employers may provide more generous contractual rights, and I know that many of you here in fact do that. But why I mention those is that, and again, I'm sure most folk here will know that there are new rights round the corner for carers. And I think that possibly just reflects the greater awareness that there is in society about the challenges that working carers face. I think more and more employers now are aware of the need to provide good and better support for carers. So there has been consultations and legislation going through the UK government at the moment, and one of the new rights which is coming into effect is that employers will have to grant carers leave, which is a new provision, and it's a new day one right, and carers will be entitled to take 5 days of unpaid carers leave per year. Now, obviously many employers already provide that and provide paid leave in many cases. But carers leave is now going to become a statutory right for carers in employment. There's also a consultation at the moment on changing the right to request flexible working, which at the moment is available after 26 weeks of service, to becoming a day one right. Now that consultation is still open, but it closes on the 1st of December. So those are a couple of things that are happening in terms of carers' rights in work. And many employers, as I said, provide this and more, and there is a lot of good practice in place. And that's something that Carer Positive and many organisations have been promoting for years. And I think just before we go into more detail, what I think is really important is, what does good practice look and feel like? And it's about more than just rights. I mean, we're here in celebration of Carers' Rights Day today, but I would say that we're wanting to promote more than kind of basic statutory and contractual rights. Good practice in a workplace where carers feel supported. From all the the best practice I've seen in organisations that I've worked in, there's a strong culture of support, and sometimes that's a culture that's had to kind of evolve and change over the years. But there's it's an organisational culture of support, and it's where carers know that they're valued and that they feel supported. It's not just that they know that they're, that there's provision or rights there, but they feel valued and supported. And they feel comfortable about having those conversations if they want to. We must always respect the fact that some carers might not want to identify themselves, but if they work in a good supportive organisation, they would feel comfortable about having that discussion with their line manager or their employer. And it's important that carers are reflected and represented in workplace policies and communications and awareness raising campaigns. And that finally, support for carers is understood and it's endorsed and it's visible at all levels. Many of our carer positive organisations, have carers champions at senior levels. They have line manager awareness raising to ensure that it's consistent across the organisation. And there are very strong messages of support for carers. So I think that's what makes a really good and supportive organisation. And just going on to, and I know most people here are probably carer positive, but for those organisations who aren't, this is just a very brief overview of our aims in Carer Positive. We're really, our primary aim is to continue to raise awareness of the growing number of people in Scotland who are juggling work and care. And before the pandemic, that was already thought to be 270,000 people in Scotland, representing around 1 in 7 or 1 in 8 in the workplace. And with the population getting older, more and more people are becoming carers, and it's a growing, kind of workplace population. We talked to employers about the business case for supporting carers in the workplace, that supporting, health and well-being and having good practice in place means you have a healthier, happier, more engaged workforce. And we have lots of evidence, both anecdotal and some, more specific evidence around why that makes good business sense for employers. We have our awards, which recognise employers who do have good policies and practice which support carers. We have awards at 3 levels: engaged, established and exemplary. So the whole framework provides a good way for employers to progress and develop support. It's very straightforward. It's a 3-page application process with just 5 key criteria around identification, around policy, around workplace support, communication and awareness raising, and peer support. And it's very flexible. It is appropriate for all sizes and structures and sectors of organisations. And the Carer Positive team provides free support and resources. And it's free to participate, of course. And we've currently got just under 220 Carer Positive employers across Scotland. And we'll be hearing from 3 of them at least today, and hopefully some more. But to go back to, and Mr. Stewart covered this a bit in his presentation, awareness of carers was really highlighted during the pandemic. And this is going right back to just a couple of months after it, really, just to give you a quick snapshot of the fact that we estimated that, by June last year, over 1 million people in Scotland were providing unpaid care. So that was an increase of almost 400,000 people who became carers as a result of the pandemic. And over 227,000 of those who started caring since the pandemic outbreak were also juggling paid work alongside their caring responsibilities. And all through the pandemic, Carers Scotland and Carers UK were kind of surveying carers about the impact of the pandemic on them. And we knew that it was really hitting hard. At that point, in October, 6 months on from the first point, 81% of carers were providing more care, and 78% said that the needs of the person they had increased since the pandemic. A survey just this year during Carers Week again looked at the impact on carers, and many were at the point of breakdown. In fact, 71% of unpaid carers in Scotland hadn't managed to have any breaks from their caring role during the pandemic, and well over a third felt they were unable to manage their caring role. We looked particularly at working carers during that time, and many working carers felt overwhelmed and very sort of under a lot of stress because they were working and caring. And with the withdrawal of care services, it was particularly challenging, with many also feeling lonely and isolated. I'm not going to read the quotes, they're there for you to see, but I will make the slides available after this workshop, and you can read a wee bit more about what people said during that. Just before Carers' Rights Day, we have published more research. So the State of Caring report is a huge big survey that gets undertaken every year across the UK. So this year's research spoke to over 8,200 carers across the UK, and that research continued to highlight the challenges that many carers are facing on a daily basis, and particularly again highlighted the impact of the pandemic. Carers' finances are stretched, but than ever more before, but at the top of their list of concerns this time was health and well-being. Carers really felt their health and well-being was at an all-time low, and mental health within that is something that they feel particularly impacted by. Again, it highlighted the growing number of working carers, and at the height of the pandemic, it was estimated over a quarter of all workers were juggling work and care. Some of the statistics from Scotland, from carers spoken to in Scotland, said that 74% of the people within the survey, that is, worried about juggling work and care. 42% of working carers said that returning to the workplace would be challenging. 11% of working carers in Scotland said they were at risk of reducing or giving up work if they weren't allowed to work from home. Although other people, and I'll speak a wee bit more about this, other people said that they found that they wanted to get back to a workplace because of the additional pressures and isolation of working from home. So, that one's not quite as straightforward as some would say. And 1 in 8 carers were at risk of reducing or giving up work without social care. And that really reflected the fact that a lot of care services still aren't at the level they were at pre-pandemic, which is causing people, a lot of difficulty. Just touching a wee bit on that working and caring from home, which is something that we've been talking to employers a lot about over the last year and a half. It has been, so helpful in enabling greater flexibility and different options for managing working patterns. The online communication platforms have been making keeping in touch easier, and it's actually enabled carers to tap into peer support options that they might not have gone to in person before. But also, it's been reported that there's been more pressure because there's less chance of a break from caring, that carers aren't having that opportunity to go into work, to interact with other colleagues, and that, there's less separation between their caring role and their working role. Again, with the withdrawal of care services, many people found that they were having to care more, but also combine that with their work schedules as well. Obviously, not all workers were able to work from home, which is a big issue for carers who are on the front line in many different public and, well, not just public services, public, private, voluntary services. For frontline workers, they didn't have that ability to work from home. And obviously connectivity, which I know is improving in many areas, is still sometimes a real issue. So I think, we need to be careful moving forward not to make assumptions that when we're talking about new models of hybrid working, let's not make assumptions that working from home all the time suits everyone. And that's I think there's a big discussion to be had around that. So during the pandemic, we've been talking to carer positive employers. We've did our own small survey last year, and I think we'll probably do another one really soon now to just sort of, you know, try and kind of gather some more evidence of how how employers have been responding to this. But basically, you know, lots of really good practice has been developed, not so much uncovered. There was a lot of good practice there already. You know, and the obvious areas of support you probably won't be surprised about are the fact that the online and virtual communication platforms has made it easier in some ways to reach out to people, and also to kind of maybe in some cases as well gain a better understanding of what somebody's home life has been. I heard from a couple of employers not that long ago that actually they didn't understand that a few folk in their organisations were carers until they saw them working at home. They got a glimpse of their home life, and it kind of brought it home to them. And also they have been encouraging peer support groups, you know, carers networks, which might have been in the workplace before, had switched to online, and that's been a tremendous help for folk. Lots of different models of agile and remote working have you know, been tested and trialled out, and I think it'd be good to hear more about some examples of those. I think employers recognise that the health and well-being of all staff, obviously not just carers, was really important during the pandemic. So we heard from, again, many employers about how they were reaching out to people and providing health and well-being support, and sometimes those were focused on carers and linked them up to specific forms of support. Also, you know, signposting people to carers support organisations and other external sources of support has been really helpful for people, making sure they're aware of the, you know, all the latest guidance and information. And also, some organisations have actually adapted their policies, and I know that a number of our employers and other organisations have actually enhanced their carers leave policies, which has been very helpful. I know that some of them enhanced the paid element of those and increased it in some cases. So it's been very encouraging to hear of the examples of good support. But I want to just finish off by sort of saying that I think just now, as we're talking about hybrid working, new models of working, I think it's a really good time for employers to review the support that they have in place, to look, you know, to gain a new understanding of staff who are carers, because, you know, people's circumstances will have changed over the past year and a half. And as we know, many people became new to caring. Now, they might have left caring since that point, but I think it's a good time for employers to really kind of touch base with everyone and ask the question. Again, recognising that some people might not want to share that information, but it's a good time to reach out and try to help people recognise themselves as carers and encourage them to come and have that conversation to see if their needs are supported. It's a good time to sense check existing policies and new return to work policies to look at if they do reflect the needs of carers. Are carers kind of, you know, particularly mentioned within those policies as their recognisance of the fact that they might still be caring for somebody in a vulnerable or shielded category? You know, how comfortable do they feel about, you know, coming back to work or needing to actually have that time away from home? To look at practical support, to again, just sort of look within health and wellbeing support to see if there's anything within the current range of health and wellbeing support that might be particularly helpful for carers, and to signpost to help and information, and most importantly to local carer centres who can provide a great sort of source of support and advice. And to use days like this and to use Carers Week and other opportunities to just raise awareness and reach out to carers and make sure that line managers and people across the whole organisations are aware of their rights, their issues, and this might mean having some open and honest conversations, but it is a good time to look at how you communicate around this. And to try as employers to look at how you might enable and encourage carers to connect with each other, because that can really help combat the loneliness and isolation that many carers feel. So look at your staff networks and any virtual support mechanisms, and see if they are reaching out to staff who might be new to caring, and to promote links again to the local carer centres, because if there isn't a staff network, then people can get peer support from local carer centres. So I'll just wrap up with a wee reminder of our support and resources, couple of slides there at the end with some information, but we will circulate all this again and make it available to people. And I would just remind carer positive employers out there that if you want to refresh your kind of engagement with us, get in touch anytime. You might be at the engaged level and want to progress to established or exemplary, or you might just want a chat to get some advice and support. And for any employers who aren't carer positive, but who just want to find out a bit more about it or to get some advice and support, then please do get in touch with us. I'll stop sharing now and come back out, and we're going to go into the next section of the session now, which is hearing from some of our carer positive employers about their perspectives. And I'm delighted to say that the folk we've got talking here today are talking as employers, but they also share some carers' perspectives as well. So we're very lucky to be able to hear from both sides. And I'm firstly I'll mute myself in a minute, and I'm going to ask Ray Higgins from Police Scotland to introduce himself, and his presentation will be made available as well. Right, thanks, Ray.
Thanks, Sue. So yeah, I'm Ray Higgins. I'm an equality and diversity advisor at Police Scotland. As Sue had said, speaking here in the context of
Ray, can I just stop you for 1 second?
Of an employment equality and diversity advisor, and also as a carer. Been a carer in a number of
Ray,
roles.
Can you hear me, Ray?
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, your audio is not very clear.
Yeah.
I don't know whether, was it clear when you spoke to Christine and Rena yesterday?
Yeah, there was a couple of times it was sort of dropping out, but it was fairly okay.
Uh-huh.
I wonder if have you got anything else on that might be.
It wasn't as good as that yesterday.
Maybe if I can ask the rest of us to, somebody's made that point. Someone's made the point in the chat. Can I ask everyone to come off video apart from Ray to see if that improves the sound quality?
Don't think so. Let me just, somebody's, there we go. Does that sound any better?
That does sound better, Ray. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So there will be some slides, I think, to put up as well.
Yes, I'll just put them up. Everyone, let me know if you can't see them or not, or if you can see them.
Yeah, do you want to stick on the slideshow, or that's it? So yeah, I'll try to keep an eye on time, but by all means just switch me off if I overrun at all. So yeah, obviously, as I said, I'm an equality and diversity advisor. I tend to have the area of caring as one of my responsibilities, but also, as I said, I'm a carer myself. Originally looking after elderly parents who have since passed away, and my daughter, my 20-year-old daughter, was a couple of years ago diagnosed with autism, which we didn't know about, and some fairly serious mental health problems. As a result of that, my daughter was really happy that I would share that with you today, and thinks it's really cool that employers are talking about this stuff. So yeah, that's the kind of background. So just to speak a little bit now about Police Scotland and the context in which we work, if you could just go to the next slide, please. So yes, I think the one thing to say here is it's big. We were established in the 1st of April 2013, and before that we had 8 regional legacy police forces, and we're responsible for policing across the whole of Scotland, over 28,000 square miles, and we cover a third of the UK landmass. And I think in terms of having a discussion with the organisation and trying to come up with solutions for the organisation, it's really relevant to understand that we have a big geographical territory, lots of different environments, urban, rural, island and remote communities. And we have a large number of people working for us, 23,500 people or thereabouts. And I think, you know, in terms of our ability to react quickly and come up with solutions that actually work in all of those locations and are accessible in all of those locations, you know, we've really had to give that quite a lot of thought. Next slide, if we can. So looking at the challenges that gives us, as I said, the obvious ones, I think, are the scale and the geography. That's not all bad. I think, you know, our size gives us opportunities to influence fairly big chunks of people, but that, you know, there is some complexity around that. When we started, we had 8 sets of legacy terms and conditions which needed to be brought together over time. And it was very, very clear that they were very inconsistent around the provisions for carers. In fact, many of them made no reference to carers at all, and most of them had no reference to actual carers leave, paid carers leave as such. The legacy policies that did speak about carers leave were very prescriptive and very restrictive. The police love our policies. We love processes, and we need those in order to function as a police force. But, you know, they tended to speak about, you know, carers of dependents who lived in the same household or were close relatives or all of that. And so there were many people that arguably fell out with those very restricted definitions. Something that still is the case, I think, but it's better, is that when people have a very inconsistent understanding of what caring is and what constitutes a carer. When we speak about carers, people wonder, is this child care? You know, what is a carer? I think, again, in Police Scotland, we're very process driven, and people want to make sure that they're awarding carers leave to the right people. So are you in or are you out? So we needed to bring some clarity around that. There was a real lack of accessible information for people and their managers. Critically, I think, you know, very often we have good people in managers wanted to do the right thing, but is not quite sure what good looks like, or what's possible, or what behaviours would be rewarded by the organisation. Are you a good manager if you're flexible and you make provision for people, or you're a good manager if you run a tight ship and keep everything nice and tight and regulated? So again, you know, we needed to do some work around that. And again, you know, we have this sort of changing demographic where people are going to be working longer. It used to be you just come into the police at any age, work 30 years and you're out of here. constantly depressed by everyone I speak to, it seems, saying, oh, I've got another 6 months to go and then I retire, and they're all younger than me, but there we go. But no, that's changing as well, and the organisation's continually evolving. So those are the kind of challenges that I think we face. So if we can just go to the next slide, which is our approach. Very busy slide, I'm sorry, but just to canter through some of these. You know, one of the things that we felt was really useful was to actually come up with an agreed internal definition of what was a carer. And I know that's a little bit wordy, but we consulted a lot with our Disability and Carers Association, who wanted some input. So in terms of making this inclusive, said a carer is an individual who has caring responsibility for someone due to frailty or mental health condition or disability who could not manage without their help. So it recognises that this is not necessarily a close family member or somebody who lives in the same household. When I spoke about consulting with the Disability and Carers Association, they were very keen to highlight that it could be mental health as well. And also they were feeding back to us that very often the most difficult and challenging times for carers are prior to a diagnosis, which would fall under the definition of the Equality Act of disability. So that's why they wanted condition or disability in there, just because not everybody will have a diagnosis under, you know, defined in the Act. One of the things that we do a lot during Carers Week and from time to time is have Carers Week articles on the intranet. We have a tradition where for the whole of Carers Week, we have a series of articles. One would be from the Chief Constable, again with that executive endorsement for carers and for caring, a series of events around the sites. We also use that to promote case studies of good practice. We created a carers intranet site, and again what we realised was that there's often good information around the organisation, but we needed to package that in such a way that it was accessible to people. So in there we've got all the, you know, the definition of carer, we've got easy access to the various policies that would be there to support carers and making it easy to identify those. We have a section which has case studies so that a line manager and the employee can sit together and look at what can be done, some practical examples of that. We then link in, we have a whole series of links to external sources of support and internal sources of support as well. So things like we have the Carer UK tool to identify your local carers association. We have the links to the carers forums and all of these sorts of things there as well. We do quite a lot in terms of executive endorsement and sponsorship. We have, as an organisation now, got a member of the executive as a formal sponsor for each of our staff associations. So we have one of our assistant chief constables who is the name sponsor for the Disability and Carers Association, and he has given out some really clear messages. You know, he did a series of truth to power sessions so people could come and tell him their lived experience of being a carer. And it's really helpful in an organisation like ours when he would be saying in his communication to the whole organisation, look, I understand that we're an emergency service. I understand that we have to provide 24-hour cover, 365 days a year. I understand all of that, but what I don't accept is that that's incompatible with providing flexibility to carers. That's a powerful message and powerful coming from somebody who, in a sort of command structure like ours is senior and is seen as being one of the sort of operational police people. We've done quite a lot around trying to embed the whole caring issue within our formal governance processes in terms of actually getting things done. So we have equality, diversity and inclusion in employment strategy group. That's chaired by the Deputy Chief Constable. And again, we report on our progress and planned actions through that group. And then that then flows into a strategic oversight board. So again, it's trying to make sure in terms of getting things done in a big organisation that actually our carers' objectives are aligned clearly to the organisation's objectives, and in terms of getting things done, that the executive are approving what we do and understanding why we're doing it, I think, and that has really helped. So again, modelling of good practice is another thing that's really important too. Is we developed as part of that, in addition to the case studies on the web intranet site, one of the things we did was to develop what we call a smarter working toolkit. And again, it's about lots of case studies and also guidance for managers in terms of what can be achieved within our formal policies, but actually what sorts of flexibilities might we be able to offer within people's existing contracts of employment. And so part of the message is, listen, this is not only about leave, this is about supporting people. It's about flexibility. If you are running a team of operational police officers, how might you practically provide some flexibility to your people in an organisation such as ourselves? So it's about showing people what can be done. We have established paid carers leave now for all our officers and staff. And one of the things that we've recently done as well is to provide staff with the option of spreading the cost of unpaid leave should they need to take that. I think unpaid leave's always been something that the organisation has said, yes, people can take, but kind of feeling that, of course, it's not always practical for people to take that. So it's trying to say, here's another option that just might help should you find yourself in those sorts of situations. Can we have the next slide, please? The final slide. So again, I'm conscious, and as I speak to other organisations, we've got large organisations and small organisations, and we all do different things. So for us, being a large organisation, this whole Carer Positive Awards scheme, has been a catalyst to really drive improvement and a framework to work with it. It's also allowed great sort of networking opportunities to share best practice. But it's not been about just trying to progress through an award scheme. It really is all about meaningful change, and that does take time. It takes tenacity, it takes patience. It's about understanding where your organisation is and doing something that's meaningful within your organisation, and understanding that might take a while, but that's okay. So we actually got engaged employer status back in 2016. And again, just with our governance processes and the planned process of bringing the legacy forces together, it was going to take us some time to change lots of our policies and processes. And that's why there is that kind of big chunk of time between then and us getting our established employer status. And I know some people in our organisation thought that was really quite a slow rate of process, and in some ways it's progress, and in some ways it was. But actually, what we really needed to do was embed the concept in some real structural and meaningful way, and that took some time. What we're doing at the moment is just taking this opportunity now to reflect and consult on what our future priorities might be, what exemplary might look like in our unique environment. And part of that consultation process is always that we work with the Police Scotland Disability and Care Association. As I said, they're a staff association. They have that executive sponsorship, but they actually do have a seat at the table on all of those boards. So, you know, the idea really is that they would act as a sort of a expert advisor and also as a critical friend, I guess. So that's just a wee kind of snapshot of where we are in the process. I think, you know, the message that I would give is that, you know, two things. I think, you know, one is that to get that meaningful change, we really need to link in at that formal strategic level. And I think the other message that, from my own perspective, seems to come up time and time again is, you know, when you speak about carers, managers will often come and have a conversation about leave. What leave is somebody entitled to? And in lots and lots of cases, yes, leave might be a component of that, but support is a critical thing. When my daughter became very unwell, you know, speaking about practice what you preach, I got overstretched, stressed, and I got unwell. And part of the process of getting me back to work was about affording me some flexibility. I have to be very honest, it also provided, involved me getting some counselling and some support to get back to work. So, you know, I think the whole thing is it needs to be more than leave. It needs to be about trying to understand the concept, understand the things that people go through, and have a range of support measures to offer people. So here endeth the lesson. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ray. That was really helpful, and it did actually highlight. You know, you mentioned that what was important was meaningful support and really kind of embedded cultural support, which you obviously received. And actually, I think what's really encouraging to know is that in organisations that maybe don't have that, you know, you might not have managed to come back to work if, you know, if you hadn't felt that well supported or comfortable. It just kind of shows the difference that really good support can make, and that employers do retain skilled and valuable members of staff by actually looking after their health and well-being.
So it was very true. Do you know, I actually had my doubts about whether I would be well enough to come back to work. And that was certainly the key. You know, somebody giving me an extra few weeks leave wasn't going to unlock it.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I think that actually helps really bring it home. So, okay, thank you, Ray. And now I'm going to ask Kevin Rooney from Agenor Technology, one of our carer positive employers as well, to share some perspective from Agenor. Tony Smith is also here as well, but Kevin's going to give the presentation, and Tony may speak at some point later on. But Kevin, I'll shut myself up now and turn my camera off, and you go for it.
Right, thank you very much, Sue, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kevin Rooney, and I'm the Comms, Marketing and CSR Manager at Agenor Technology. And as Sue said, we've also got Tony Smith, who's our Head of Business Operations, on the call. And Tony's a working carer himself, and he's also our carer advocate on the Agenor leadership team. So he can keep me right if I start to veer off track or start rambling on about Peppa Pig or any other such nonsense. Anyway, Sue's asked us to talk today a bit about our path to becoming a carer positive organisation, and share some of the experiences and insights that we've kind of gained along the way that's helped us actually attain our Carer Positive Established Award earlier this year, and which, as you'll see, we achieved, but with a lot of help from Carer Scotland and a few other bodies that I'll touch on. But first, to provide a little bit of context, can I have the next slide, please?
No problem, one moment. And can you see that okay?
I can see that one, yeah. Can I have the
Great.
next one? Next one. Brilliant, thank you. So for those of you who haven't heard about Agenor Technology before, which I suspect is quite a number of you, we are a relatively small to medium-sized IT services company. We've got around 45 permanent employees and a number of associates that we can draw on to help us flex our workforce as required. So we're really at the opposite scale, end of the scale from Police Scotland. We were formed in the Scottish Borders in 2006, so we've been around for a while. But we are based primarily in Edinburgh now, with a small European team also in the Netherlands, servicing a client in Amsterdam. In terms of what we do, I guess the simplest way I can describe it is that we help our clients harness the benefits of digital technology to increase the effectiveness of their teams and their processes, but ultimately it's about improving the overall performance of their business. You know, we service clients across both the public and the private sector. So that's the adverts over. Let's have a look at how we've gone about becoming a Carer Positive organisation. Can I have the next slide, please? Brilliant, thank you. A few years ago, we actually applied to Scottish Enterprise for some funding and support, which we got, thankfully, and we used that to engage an external consultant to help us define our company purpose, our vision and our values. And being able to articulate what we stand for as a team was really the sort of first step for us in deciding how we want to conduct ourselves as a business and to meet all the different expectations from the different stakeholder groups that we face off to. And then once we'd done that, that really allowed us to go on and start to develop a business strategy that was consistent with our purpose, vision and values. And at the same time, it stimulated a conversation internally around how we make sure that we not only deliver our strategy, but we do it in a way that is both ethical and sustainable over the long term. And so out of those conversations, we developed our CSR policy, which along with our company values, it kind of guides us in all that we do as a business and ensures that we try to be good corporate citizens for all our stakeholders. But for the purpose of today's conversation, really the two key stakeholder groups we're talking about here are our employees and the wider community. Next slide, please. Right, so this is an extract from our CSR policy. And as you can see here, that for employees, we've got a firm commitment to support their health and well-being, which, as you'd expect, includes people who are juggling carer responsibilities with holding down the demands of their day jobs. And then the other policy commitment, which is relevant here, is to share our success with the community around us. And we'll talk a little bit more in a minute about some of the work that we've done with our charity partner, who is the voice of carers across Lothian, or Vocal, in the acronym, and in particular what we've done to help them raise awareness of the challenges that are facing carers across the community, and also some of the vital services that they offer to support them. Next slide, please. So I think one of the top strengths I'd say that Agenor has as an organisation, we're a very small organisation, as I said, but that means that we're really not afraid to admit when we don't know how to do something, or to reach out for help and ask for it. So the key message here on this slide really is that, you know, we haven't been able to do all this on our own. To get to being a Carer Positive established organisation, we've really had to tap into the expertise of a lot of different agencies. So for anyone else on the call who's looking at becoming a Carer Positive company, there is lots of support out there. And I'll briefly just go through some of the ones that have been the most useful to us on our journey so far anyway. I've already mentioned the Scottish Enterprise, so moving on to the Scottish Business Pledge as the first one. as a Scottish Business Pledge employer, we were made aware back in January 2020 that the Scottish Government were carrying out a refresh of the pledge, and that included reference to how employers should support their workforce through participating in the government's Carer Positive initiative. So, quick as a flash, Christine at Carer Scotland reached out to Tony to offer us some support, which was great, and very shortly thereafter we signed up as a Carer Positive to the Carer Positive Award Scheme, and that really got the ball rolling for everything that's followed for us. And obviously Sue and Christine and the team at Carer Scotland have been a fantastic source of support and advice, and one of the sort of key things that they recommended to us from the outset was to ensure that carers at Agenor have a voice and are listened to. So their needs are reflected in our policies and our processes. So, for example, they helped us create a new carer support policy, which we launched in early 2020. But they also really made us think about how to involve carers in our various policy and decision-making forums. And as a result, we've now got working carers on our CSR team and our quality team, which really oversees much of the sort of policy development and compliance, and ensures that all the commitments around creating an inclusive and supportive culture for carers and everybody else is being adhered to. Before I go into Vocal, I just wanted to quickly touch on the role of that quality management plays for us. We're audited annually by QMS International for our quality management ISO 9001. And this really ensures that all our policies are regularly reviewed and then updated and communicated through our internal comms channels. So that means that everyone is aware of what support is available to them. So, you know, quality management is really an important control mechanism for us that makes sure that we do things consistently so that people don't fall through the cracks or maybe suffer in silence due to a lack of awareness of actually what support is available. Vocal, I think it was actually Sue that introduced us to Vocal, who are the voice of carers across Lothian. And they've been an absolute fantastic source of advice for us. And as a result, we actually signed a formal partnership with them last year. And this partnership agreement is really mutually beneficial in that what it does for us is that it provides Vocal employees with a ready-made support network and access to a whole lot of resources for working carers. And in return, what we do is we provide them with some marketing support, and we help by amplifying their voice through our social media channels to increase awareness of the services and the issues that they're dealing with for carers across a wider audience. And we've also had staff volunteer their time to Vocal to provide them with some IT consultancy and support for their own in-house systems so that they can keep their operations running smoothly for the benefit of carers and the wider community. So that's been a fantastic staff engagement exercise for us. And as I say, like for Agenor colleagues, like a lot of smaller companies, we already do have quite a close-knit team culture within Agenor, and we also have a very engaged group of people who sit on our CSR team, which, as I said earlier, includes some working carers, and they've really embraced the partnership with Vocal by volunteering both their time and their expertise to support the cause. And they've also, you know, they've enthusiastically thrown themselves into various fundraising activities that we've organised with Vocal over the past year or so, including things like the annual Kilt Walk, the Edinburgh Marathon Festival, and donating to Vocal's Carers Are Stars Christmas appeal last year. Can I have the next slide, please? So I think the biggest highlight of the year for us was definitely the Vocal Skydive back in July, where we put forward a team of fearless volunteers to jump out of a very small aeroplane at 10,000 feet over a very small airfield in Fife to raise funds and awareness for Vocal. And fortunately, as you can see from the photographs there, we had absolutely perfect weather. And it really was an exceptional day with the guys being able to fulfill a lifetime ambition. And from a staff engagement perspective, it was really great that we could support them and provide them with an experience and one that they'll never forget. And I should point out that neither Tony or I made the jump, which somebody had to hold the jackets. But to be fair and true, I'm a celebrity get me out of here fashion. I think we were both exempt on medical reasons, but anyway. Finally, I thought I'd probably just leave you with a message that we got from an Agenor employee who is a carer and is a member of our CSR team. And I think she perfectly sums up the type of support that we are able to provide now at Agenor. And it's probably an example of what good practice looks like for us. So I'll just read that out. I helped my dad care for my mum to enable her to stay in the family home. Agenor have been incredibly supportive throughout, and caring can often be a hidden issue which employees find hard to talk about. But the culture and the ethos at Agenor has meant that I have always felt able to discuss my situation with colleagues and managers without fear. The corporate and social responsibility policy Agenor have established have led to a partnership with Vocal, who offer additional advice and support, which has been a great help to me. I've been able to work flexibly when needed to attend appointments and deal with caring duties while still being able to do my job well. For me, the support provided in the workplace has meant that I have always felt like a valued member of staff with great career prospects. So I think that really does sum it up nicely and gives a good example of how far we've come as an organisation and some of the things that we've got in place to support carers in the workplace. So I think that's probably enough for me. I don't know, Tony, if you want to say something before I hand back to Sue.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. That was great. I think it's important to say that Kevin and I, a part of our job, or a big part of our job, was to improve our systems and processes across the business. So initiatives like becoming a carer positive employer and signing up to the Scottish Business Pledge, that isn't a tick box exercise for us. Sue talked about good practice. So for me and Kevin, getting involved in these initiatives is a way for us to understand what is good practice, educating ourselves, going back to our leadership team with what we've learned, and trying to make Agenor as good an organisation as possible to work for, to show our employees that they're valued. As Kevin said, we got involved with Sue and the Carer Positive, Sue introduced us to Vocal. A tangible output from that, we've now got a carers policy where we all understand what rights we have as carers and as employers from a legal perspective. Also within the policy, there's a softer description of what to do, what you can do, and what support you're entitled to. So for me, we've improved our business by getting involved in these initiatives, and we'll continue to do so. So, thanks, Sue, thanks to everyone for helping us get to where we are today.
And thank you both for that, and that was great. And again, I think the endorsement from the carer that Kevin spoke about, that you read out, just shows that that's been a really sort of successful journey you've been on, and that she does feel valued and comfortable about coming forward and identifying herself as a carer. So thanks again for sharing your story. That was really good to hear. So our final employer for the moment is Peter Lawson, who works for Natwest, formerly RBS, when they first started the journey. So we're going to hear from Peter now, and I will put myself off mute, Peter, again, and off camera, but welcome to the stage, if you like, if that's what we will call it.
Yes, definitely. How long have I got, Sue? Because I know we're running over already.
Yeah, we're running over a bit, but it's fine. Just 10 or 15 minutes, Peter, is absolutely fine. Just for as long as you feel.
Yeah.
Or 10.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know, I'll go on for hours if you let me, Sue.
Okay, 10 minutes then.
Right. Okay. Afternoon, everybody. My name's Peter Lawson, so I work for NatWest Bank. I'm coming at this from a slightly different point to the previous speakers. My day job is actually in finance. I'm a business analyst. Currently looking at a very, very interesting regulatory report. But a side of desk role, if you like, is that a number of years ago, I became involved with an employer-led network at the bank, Family and Carers Network. And as a consequence of that, I've ended up doing chair and vice chair roles for the network. I've been global carers lead for several years. I've taken a little bit of a step back now, but I'm still doing a lot of work with in the UK and primarily Scotland. All of them, my work with Sue and Care of Scotland, I've gone the opposite way to Agenor. I actually got introduced to them by Vocal. I started using Vocal, and I've had several bouts of counselling off them over the years, and just found them as a local resource. And Vocal now we've helped them host a number of events in our offices in the past, and we use them for some training sessions that we do for carers and members throughout our employer-led network. So in terms of where the bank is with Carer Positive, we're at the exemplary level. Can't even say that word. We're very good anyway. And we actually went through the process quite quickly. I was the person who drove the Carer Positive accreditation in the bank and presented to our board that we should do it, because we have lots of accreditations around working parents and working families, but nothing for carers. And I knew we had decent policies, but I wanted to see where we were and what else we could do, which is again why we've got in touch with Sue and Vocal, and we're part of the Edinburgh Carers Forum. So Ray, Police Scotland and Sue are people who attend that. So our actual Carer Positive journey was very quick. We became, we got the engaged status at the start of 2018, and we got the exemplary status in September 2018. So it was a very quick process. And that was primarily because a lot of the building blocks in terms of the Carer Positive accreditation, as a bank, we already had in place. We had all of the carers leave, all of the support. We have the employer-led network. So the Family and Carers Network was probably founded about 8 or 9 years ago. So we had all of that in place. But the interesting journey that we've taken over the last few years, and it's probably since we got the Carer Positive accreditation, has been the changing culture around well-being in the entire bank, and how that onwardly has affected carers in a good way. So a lot of the things the bank have done has actually been for everybody, but they have benefited carers as well. And off the back of those, we've been able to amend policies for carers to give that little bit of extra leeway and flexibility. So in terms of being flexible and looking after carers, I've been a carer for my wife for about 15 years now. She has MS. And even going back 10 years ago, I had for a time a flexible working arrangement because she was on a drugs trial when she moved to Scotland with me, but the drugs trial was not being run in Scotland. So one day every 4 weeks, I worked compressed hours. So one day every 4 weeks, I could have a day off so I could take her to Newcastle so that she could continue to get the drugs on the drug trial. So those sorts of flexible and informal ways of working flexibly have always been available in the bank. But obviously, as my wife's conditions got worse over the years, and we were office-based, pretty much all of the time, that became more of a strain and more difficult. And as Ray said, mental health and just general issues with fatigue and stress gradually increased. Now, about 3 years ago, we actually moved on to a hybrid. A lot of people moved on to a hybrid working model because people realized that people wanted more flexibility and giving the opportunity for people to work from home because we had that technology. So I was actually, when the pandemic hit, I was already working from home 2 days a week. And a lot of my colleagues around the bank were, and this is globally. So we've still got, I think, something around 70,000 employees globally, and approximately 50,000 of those are still in the UK. We've obviously got sizable populations in India and Poland and Holland, and we've got smaller offices still. As much as we're not as global as we were, we've still got offices in America and a number of other countries as well. I'm currently doing some work with some people in Germany and Ireland as well. So we have that. When the pandemic hit, we were already in a very good place from the point of view that most people could already work from home. So the bank was actually set up really well to support people. And also over the last couple of years, and especially since Alison Rose took over as CEO, which is just coming up for 2 years, there's been a huge ramp up in awareness of well-being and what we can do to support people. And that's not just carers, that's everybody within the bank. That's partly become from the employer-led networks that we have. So we have a number of employer-led networks around multicultural networks, a rainbow network, disability networks, the family and carers network, and also smaller networks around career opportunities. And we have a gender network, we have an armed forces network, we have lots of things going on. And Alison Rose was always the executive sponsor of the employer-led networks. Not only did she continue to be the executive sponsor of the employer-led networks when she became CEO, I was part of the delegation of people who actually met her for an event to see how the employer-led networks would work going forward within a week of her becoming CEO. And she wanted to make it very clear to us that she still supported us and wanted us to move forward. And she's been a real champion of us, enabling us. What she wants us to do, she wants us to challenge the bank to do the right thing and put the right support in place. So where we've had the all of the policies and support in place, it's enabled us to help bank to bring those to life a little bit more. Now, in terms of the pandemic and when that hit, obviously the bulk of people started to work from home. I had the added challenge that my wife had a very serious MS relapse just as the pandemic was starting to hit, and actually spent 2 months in hospital. So I had a couple of weeks special leave, which I was given as just sort of compassionate leave. So we do have the carers leave, etc., but we also have things that cover paid carers leave, like dependence leave, compassionate leave, etc., that managers have the ability to give. So I had a couple of weeks of that, and then I actually got myself signed off ill because of the stress, etc. But my wife, as I say, was in hospital for 2 months. But coming back, pretty much everybody was working from home at that time. So it was actually, I got a lot of support from my line manager, great support actually from management higher up in the area who were very aware of what was happening, and from people across the bank who could see issues that were happening. And again, all of this emphasis on general well-being within the bank has really helped, so that when things like this do happen to people, I've seen that there is the support out there and the managers are supportive, and very well, a lot of people are aware of what help is out there, but there's also a lot of people aware, sort of inclusion champions, well-being champions, etc., who can point people to the right resources. So I managed to get back to work, and with everything that's changed within the bank, we've developed a lot of new things in terms of things that can be used to support carers, but also the wider bank community. So I'm just actually looking at some of the wellbeing support that we have in place. So obviously, as a network, we run calls for our members. We actually ran one with HR to go through all the HR policies this morning, just to mark Carers' Rights Day. We have Vocal coming in to do a course with us at the start of December, just on preparing for winter. We also have the general courses, we have line manager training, we have lots of guides on the intranet, like Ray alluded to at Police Scotland. We have something called Moments That Matter, which gives people specific, there's specific section on there in caring for a loved one. So lots of advice for line managers as well as the HR policies. But in terms of other things that we've got around for carers, we've got things like Silver Cloud, which is a mental health tool online that has lessons on it. We work with Nuffield Health, because we have Nuffield Health gyms at a couple of our bigger offices. They also offer a virtual GP service, so we use that. We have the employee assistance program, so people can ring up and ask for support and help and advice around issues that they're having, which can be involved with caring. On top of that, we've also signed up with Legal and General for something called a carer concierge service. So if you've got a family member who's elderly and they need to go into care, the carer concierge service will help free of charge to start some of that journey up, in terms of what options you have for long-term care for that person. As well as that, outside the bank, like Ray said, we've signed up with Employees for Carers, which is the digital offering that Carers UK offer. So we've got all of that on our side. And we've also, outside that, for people who are working parents who are effectively caring for younger children, we have the City Parents Organisation, who we leverage free seminars off. And as a bank, we also have the Bank Workers Charity, who umbrella cover a lot of those services that we already have in place as a bank. But if you're not comfortable with doing it through the bank itself, you can go to the Bank Workers Charity and get financial advice, care advice, etc. So we have a huge amount of resource out there to support people. There's still things we can do better. There's still things that we need to amend on the HR policies to make them more supportive. And there's a big piece of work to do within the bank to make sure that the policies that we do have and the good support that we do have is wider known and also is applied in a more consistent way through the bank, so everybody's getting as much support as they can. The one last thing that I will say that we've done as well, as a bank, and there has been a lot of input from all of the employee-led networks on this, was we were looking at a way to, based on how everybody's been working from home, how we could strike a balance so people could have flexibility going forward, but also not only give a framework for people to work on, which we're going to learn from and adapt as we're going forward, but also to enable the people who want to and need to be in the office to have the opportunity to do so, and the people who potentially have less need to be in the office to have the flexibility to spend less time in the office. So what the bank has come up with initially is effectively 3 working patterns. So we have remote first, which is what I'm on, which is about 1/3 of the employees of the bank, so over 20,000 staff. And of those 20,000 staff, a lot of them, like me, based in finance and more back office roles, where your team is not necessarily all in the same office, so you can't see all your team in the same office anyway. I'm currently, the current advice is to try and go into the office at least 1 day a fortnight, but no more than 2 days a week. So that's the model that I'm on at the moment. I went into the office for a couple of face-to-face meetings yesterday morning, came back and did my afternoon at home, and I'm working from home obviously today as well. About half the bank are on that hybrid working, which is what I was doing prior to the pandemic, which is working in the office 3 days a week and working from home 2 days a week. And also then the last 13% are people who were working office first. So they're in roles that includes the people in the branch who work in the branches, and also people in frontline roles who, because of regulatory requirements, they have to be in an office to protect data, etc. But again, we're trying to work flexibility into those roles so they get the opportunity to do things at home, whether it be personal development or other things, as much as possible as well. And trying to find the balance where if you don't need to be in the office, don't be in the office, but give you the enough opportunity to go into the office that if you want to be in the office for social interaction, etc., you still have the opportunity to do so. So that's the model that's been worked on at the moment, and it's constantly being reviewed. We're just starting to get a lot of the people back into the offices more. We won't get the staff in India back into the office probably till the new year. So it's something that's not just been done in the UK, and it's not something that's not just been done for carers, but it's a global thing that the bank's looking at for well-being and flexibility that is benefiting carers and also in enabling us to leverage those changes to get even more support into the bank for carers. So I feel we're in a pretty good place. I think there's more we can still do. And we will continue to challenge the bank to make sure that that happens. Okay, back to you, Sue.
Thanks very much, Peter. That's really interesting. Great to hear of the different models of kind of hybrid and remote working that are being developed. And I guess similar to a lot of other organisations, a lot of this will be a case of sort of trial and testing a number of different approaches as they go along. I'm sure there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to this, so it'll be interesting to kind of monitor that. And just before I go on, Peter, am I right in saying that if people tune into STV News tonight, you might be visible at one point?
Yes, apparently I've already been on this morning and sometime around lunchtime as well, because I've had a couple of people saying that me and my wife have been seen. So I'm sure there'll be something on tonight if you haven't seen enough of my face already.
So yeah, tune in to STV tonight, folks, because they've got a spotlight on Carers Rights Day, but particularly on focusing on working carers. And Peter very kindly agreed to be interviewed for that. So thanks again, Peter.
No worries.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask our final speaker, Lorraine, to come on now, but I also just wanted to say, following Lorraine, we'll have a very quick comfort break, and then we'll not have a huge amount of time for sort of chat and questions afterwards. So if anyone's got any questions that they've thought about so far for Peter, for Ray, for Kevin or Tony, by all means pop them into the chat box, and we can start off with, with maybe kind of asking some of those. But Lorraine, if you'd like to introduce yourself now, I'll disappear. Thanks very much.
Hi. Oh. Hi everyone, can you see me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll just carry on then. I'm conscious that it's tea break next, so I'm sure people want me to rush forward. So thanks very much, Sue, and for everyone in inviting me to speak here today. It's been really interesting and good to hear, the previous speakers and the best practice that's been delivered to support carers and workers with caring responsibilities. That supports our vision for Scotland that's got fair work at its heart. I thought it would be useful today just to put the sort of practice that's been discussed in the Carers Positive Initiative in the context of Scottish Government's ambition for Scotland to be a leading fair work nation by 2025. You'll know that employment laws reserved to Westminster, so Scottish Government have got limited powers and we've got no employment powers as such, but we are committed to using the levers that we've got available, for example, through public spend, and as well as promotion of fair work through all policy agendas to make fair work the norm, and hopefully going beyond the minimum statutory employment rights and protections. This all comes from the Fair Work Convention's 2016 framework. That says that fair work offers all individuals an effective voice, opportunity, security, fulfilment and respect, and that balances the rights and responsibilities of employers and workers that can benefit for individuals, organisations and society. So fair work to us is about breaking down and removing barriers to opportunity so that everyone, regardless of age, race, gender, socioeconomic background, or indeed caring responsibilities, can enter and progress in the workplace. And we've spoken about, I think a few folk have highlighted that fair work is good for business, good for workers and good for the economy. People like the Fraser of Allender Institute in their 2016 report, they recognise that treating workers fairly will help to create more diverse and inclusive workplaces where workers have greater security of pay and contract, can develop their skills, have an effective voice, and it can also have benefits like improving well-being and motivation and enable employers to recruit, grow and retain skilled people. The benefits of diverse workforces is also things like enhanced staff retention, lower absenteeism, enhanced motivation, higher levels of innovation and better decision making. So recruiting diverse workforces and embracing them brings dividends, in terms of enhanced productivity and performance, and it also enables employers to recruit from a wider pool of talent and using underutilised talent that's out there already. Earlier on today, the Minister touched on the number of carers in Scotland who combine employment and unpaid care, and Sue mentioned it too, and it represents about one in 8 of the workforce, and the majority of these are women. Part of my role in the Fair Work and Labour Market division is to take action to reduce the gender pay gap, so I've got quite a keen interest in that side of things. And it's been really encouraging today to see that all the contributors are male, which is quite unusual, but very, very welcome. But we know that women are still regarded as the primary carers in household, especially those in their late 40s and early 50s. And we've mentioned, that this can have a detrimental effect on women's entry, progression and retention in the workplace, because a lot of women have to either give up work because of their caring responsibilities, or they're not able to take up promotion. They can also find that their job choices are limited and they have to take lower part-time paid work to balance work and their care commitments. So it's good to see, the variety of speakers today, and because we really need to try and break down stereotypes, and seeing that men are taking leadership roles and leading by example is definitely a positive step in the right direction. And it's been mentioned more than once about the access to decent flexible working. It can hinder the ability for carers to balance their responsibilities and progress in work. So Scottish Government, we currently promote and support flexible working. We fund 2 organisations at the moment that provide advice and support to businesses and how to take up and adapt flexible working practices. And this not only supports carers in the workplace, but it benefits all workers that are looking for a good work-life balance. I think Sue mentioned the flexible working consultation that's ongoing with the UK government, and we are contributing to
Lorraine, I don't know whether it's just me. If you can hear me, you've frozen on my screen, but maybe other folk can hear.
No, I've lost Lorraine as well.
Too.
No, I'm frozen.
Thought it was me for a moment.
Okay, okay. We'll maybe send Lorraine a wee message and she might refresh her screen. Whoops. No. Okay, I think if everyone can hear me, I think we'll just take, Lorraine, I don't know whether you're back with us and whether you can hear me. You froze and we probably lost what you were saying. But what I'm going to suggest is we take our comfort break and come back in 5 minutes, just to wind up with some questions and answers. Because I'm conscious that we're kind of towards the end of the session now. So thanks everyone for sort of sticking with us so far, but we'll come back just about 3:48 or so, if that's okay. Just take a quick 5-minute break. Thanks. Hi everyone, hope that was enough time just for a wee break, but we are actually almost near the end of this. So without further ado, can I just say thanks again to everyone who has spoken, and I'm just wanting to open this out now really to any kind of questions and discussion while we've still got some time, and I would ask if anyone wants to either put their hand up to ask any of the panel of speakers anything particularly, or to make any sort of general points or comments, to either put your hand up or take yourself off mute and just start speaking. I think that, you know, there's a small enough number to be able to do that, or to pop a question in the chat. So if anyone's got anything they want to say, now's the time to do it.
Hi, Sue.
Hi there.
Hi, I'm Bev Melia from Registers of Scotland.
Nice
so
to
thank
see
you today. I'm a secondary carer myself, so it's a personal question. I did miss the first 10 minutes because our government computers blocked your links. So you may have gone into some of this, but on a personal note, can I ask you a question actually about rights? Because we don't have a policy, we just have it embedded in other policies. And I'm a secondary carer actually to my mother who's down south, so I give respite to my brother, and so that he can get a break so many weeks a year. So I use all my leave. And that is that part of other people's policies? Have you seen it where it's the definition of a carer, I guess?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's not something that I am conscious of seeing explicitly within organizational policies, but other folk here may be, you know, as employers, may be more aware of that. But you know, I think that raises a really good point. I think, I mean, to me, that you're part of a kind of caring circle, if you like.
I'm a nucleus, yeah. If I don't give him respite, then mum's going to have to go in a home. So we're trying to keep it going. But of course, so I then don't get any rest because I use all my leave. Yeah.
I mean, so personally, I would sort of say that you do have caring responsibilities. As you know, in that kind of secondary, you're caring from a distance. For because you still will be providing care for your, your mother and directly as well. You'll be on the phone with her. You'll be providing emotional support
every single day.
There's probably quite a lot you're doing as a carer for your mum, even though you're not physically. Even though you're not physically there, but I think that raises a really good, really good point about whether that's actually reflected within organisational policies.
Yeah, and because it's like, I just wondered if another company has got that in there.
I'm going to have a wee look through. I mean, we get sent through lots of policies. So it's something that we can have a proper kind of research of, and I can check with other colleagues in Carers UK as well. Thanks for raising it.
Your dialogues today have led us to believe that obviously we probably need to formalise a carers policy, than it being in lots of different policies, And
quite
so
helpful
when
to
we
see.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. That was really helpful. Corinne, were you wanting to say something?
I was just wanting to say, Bev, I worked for North Lanarkshire Carers Together, and we're carer positive, we're exemplary, and I was very fortunate. My father had dementia, and I dropped today eventually to look after him, but a lot of people think when your loved person goes into a care home, your caring role stops. My caring role didn't stop when my dad went into nursing care, so kind of similar to you. I wasn't hands-on every day, but there was every single day I went to the nursing home to visit him, and I also had, to make sure that I had his clothes clean and brought him in his, whatever else he needed, his essentials. So, and our organisation was, they were very favourable for me to drop my hours and have flexible working. So it did work kind of similar to you, not being the hands-on approach, but I still did have a caring role. So I think it does come down to your individual employer and their understanding of carers and their empathy.
Great. And I think our place would be very empathetic to it if they saw examples, Yeah.
Hi, Bev, it's Peter again. I've just been, funnily enough, I've just looked at our carers leave policy.
Yeah.
And we've got a definition of who is a carer. And one of the definitions is respite for another person who is providing full-time care and attention to the person being cared for.
That's fantastic, Peter. Thank you.
So at the bank, you would be covered under carers leave.
Okay. Is that top secret, your policy? Is it something that's shareable to Sue?
I tell you what, Sue, if you want to pass our policy on to Bev, can you just send me an email? And I'll see if I can send the full policy on.
Okay.
If you're allowed, Thank you.
If I'm allowed, I'll do that. No worries.
Don't do anything till you've checked. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just very quickly, Sue, if I could add to that, I think, the point that I made in my presentation was that, it's not always about leave. And I think that for me, the whole point of a supportive employer and an effective HR department is to find ways of unblocking situations that will allow people to work. So, are you necessarily saying that you need to vanish off the face of the earth for that period of time? Or could you have a conversation with your employer that says, look, if I can have access to a laptop and deal with things remotely or work remotely. For example, I had a colleague a while ago whose father was elderly, and just at that time, does he need to go into a home or not? And the family are in Ireland. So, she for a period of time had to be in Ireland, but was in touch with us every day, and we were in touch with them. And so it's about saying, having a dialogue about what would unblock it, what meaningfully might help. And I think employers are always nervous because they think you're actually saying, can I vanish? Can I have paid time off? And that's not necessarily the solution. So that's the only thing.
That's great. That's good advice. Thank you, Ray.
Yeah, and I would echo that, Bev, because I work 9 days out of 10, so I have every other Friday off, which just turns out to be tomorrow. So as soon as I finish this meeting, I'm done for the week, which is nice. But we've actually had, just from the bank point of view, and obviously we've got people who've come in from abroad, etc. And I know we've actually had a guy who's worked remotely from Hong Kong for 3 weeks because his father was ill. So if you've got the technology to do it, there's no reason that you couldn't go to your mum's, for example, for the week and maybe just work 2 days of it and have the other 3 days with her.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I think we are advanced in that way. We've got everything for that. So I think it's maybe just us bottoming out a wider policy. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thank you. Anyway, I'll shut up now, so let other people.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I thought that was a really good point to think about. I think it just does highlight the importance of having discussions, you know, honest and open discussions, and focusing on, you know, well, what could work. You know, there might not always be an immediately obvious solution to something, but there will be, you know, there'll be very, very few situations where an employer can't provide some form of support or, you know, sort of trial and error basis type of solution. Thanks again, Bev. Does anyone else have any other issues or points they want to share? Jennifer, hello.
Hi there, I work in the HR team at STV. We currently have an employee parents and carers combined network, but I think increasingly we're, you know, acutely aware that the needs of those two groups are, you know, can be quite different. It was just to really get a sense from others on the call and other employers whether they have sort of separated those two groups of colleagues out, or if they have the sort of shared experiences that they've kind of kept them as one network group.
Yeah, and that's a point that I've come across in other organisations as well. And you're right, sometimes they've started as parents and carers, and then actually carers have realised that their needs are really quite distinct from parents, and actually the challenges they face are really quite different. And sometimes, you know, carers in a sort of support group network really need to feel the kind of empathy and understanding from other people in their situations. So yeah, I mean, sometimes that, I know that, and I think Peter's going to come in here, it can work actually, parents and carers and you know, groups that have that wider spectrum, but I totally see where it's you know, a good idea to kind of separate those groups out as ones that have actually quite challengingly different needs.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Thank you.
Peter, were you going to say something there, or am I just
yeah. So obviously we are family and carers in terms of our group, and I think there's been conversations in the past about whether the carers side would be better splitting off, but I think, to be honest, we're a more powerful group together, and the way that we've got our policies aligned is the parental leave and the carers leave policies are actually very similar, to the point where that if you're caring for somebody who is under 18, use the parental leave policy rather than the carers leave policy. The carers leave is basic. The carers leave policies are distinctly for adults in the bank, and anything under 18 is dealt with for the parental leave. But as I say, we had a meeting with HR to go through the policies. The way we've got them set up for the parental leave and the carers leave, apart from obviously maternity, paternity, etc., but sort of like emergency leave, dependence leave, that sort of thing, they're almost exactly the same.
Yeah,
that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, Jennifer, I would just add, you know, if you know, talking to carers within that network, I think the most important thing is if you feel as carers that a separate group would be one that you would kind of connect more to and feel more comfortable about kind of opening up and sharing experiences with, because actually, you know, in my experience of talking to carers in carers networks, some of the, you know, that's sometimes the most important element of support within their organisation. And it is sometimes just, you know, having a chat about, it's maybe not about what's going on in the workplace. It's not about you know, the policies or leave. Sometimes it's just sort of being able to have a bit of a break, you know, a bit of a cry sometimes even, but just that kind of connection and talking to other carers who, you know, might be really, really sort of struggling as well. So I think it's whatever works in your own organisation and whatever feels right for you as carers.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you very much. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Hi, Anoop. Are you going to?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, no, I was just going to sort of respond to that as well, because we also have, where we work at the FCA, Parents and Carers Network. And I can understand the question, and I think sort of totally agree with what Peter was saying there in terms of the similarities. And I think one of the ways we might manage some of that is we have very specific events, for example, on specific conditions. So if someone wants to talk about a specific condition, and we know that there are a number of people in the organisation that want to talk about that, then we'll create that. So you can carve it out a little bit sometimes, I think. So I think that's the way we manage it. But as Peter says, a lot of the things are fairly similar in nature, I think.
Yeah, and just to pick up on that as well, Anu, yeah, we run specific events for carers, etc. We've got the disability network, so we tend to pair up with them if there's something that needs to be done on a specific disability or condition, because it just so happens that one of the co-chairs of Enable, like my wife, has MS, so we do some things together on MS, etc. But as well, if there's something that's a particularly sensitive subject, we have a sub-network for fertility and loss that goes into things like IVF treatment and adoption and fostering as well. So if your organisation is big enough and you can have little subgroups that come off. I think there's a little subgroup somewhere in the bank that's for parents for children with autism that they've set up themselves, etc. So there's all these little splinters can go off if you want to do specific sessions on things. But if you want, but collectively to push things along, it's good to try and have everybody together under one banner as well.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because we also blend with the other networks. So, you know, if we want to talk about, you know, whatever that is, and it affects parents and those children, then we do a sort of a joint event with them. So that's quite helpful. Sorry, Ray.
Sorry, I was just going to say, just to add a wee bit to that, the way we manage it in Police Scotland is that it's a disability and carers association that we have. And I think, you know, the thing that makes stuff happen is that our staff associations are aligned through the organisation to the executive sponsor. So in a sense, we don't want to have too many of those in terms of dividing the effectiveness and the communication with us as an organisation. But certainly that group was growing to such an extent that it made sense for them to have a carers subcommittee within the Disability and Carers Association, but collectively they're aligned to an executive sponsor. And so if you had all of these little subgroups all trying to align, the ability to actually get stuff done in some meaningful way, we believe, would be eroded. So I think for us, it's keep the formal organisations to a manageable size, but obviously engage with their subgroups, if that helps at all.
No, it does. Thank you. Thank you all very much. That's really helpful.
So I need to drop off now because I have to go off to another meeting, but thank you very much. It was really helpful.
Okay, thank you, Anu. Lovely to see you again. And I'm conscious now, everyone, that it is just after 4 o'clock. I'm sorry we didn't have more time for discussion. I'm going to put my hand up and say that was my fault for talking for too long during my presentation. So I'm going to sort of wrap up just by saying thanks again to our speakers today. I felt it was really helpful to kind of get that first-hand insight into what they've been doing in their organisations to develop carer support, and actually hearing their personal experiences was probably the most kind of helpful part of that. So thanks very much everyone for sharing your stories. Just to say to folk that this sort of session today has probably, you know, we've heard from speakers rather than having much of a chance for discussion, but I'm really keen to kind of continue to, what we've been doing over the last year is holding a number of kind of geographically sort of area-based sessions with employers in different parts of Scotland, so that we get sort of smaller groups of kind of like employers in the same area creating partnerships and getting more chance for discussion. So we're going to continue with those, and I would just say to folk, if anyone here from any business or organisation wants to suggest that we organise a sort of, you know, discussion session with them and with partner organisations and employers, please get in touch, because we can set these up quite easily now virtually without having to sort of travel about, obviously, which has been a bit of a benefit. So I'd like to thank everyone again for coming along. We'll make the slides available if you want them, and again, just get in touch for any advice, information and support. So thanks very much everyone, and have a good evening.